Detective William Sinclair was not your average investigator. Standing at 6 feet with a penchant for unkempt hair and an always wrinkled trench coat, he had a brain as sharp as a tack and a sense of humor drier than a Sahara summer. That Thursday morning he received a curious summons: solve a baffling case aboard the Manhattan Express train. As he boarded the train, he encountered a peculiar group of passengers. There was Mrs. Huckleby, the sweet old lady who wouldn't harm a fly but had a history of poisoning garden gnomes; Mr. Baxter, the painfully punctual businessman who once sued his own shadow for being late; and Penelope, an aspiring opera singer whose high notes could shatter glass or eardrums. The victim was discovered in one of the lavish compartments, completely unconscious with a classic rubber chicken under his arm, and several torn playing cards scattered across his lap. It looked more like a peculiar prank than a heinous crime. Sinclair knew this was no ordinary case. Sinclair began his investigation by interviewing each suspect in turn, starting with Mrs. Huckleby. She insisted she was knitting suspiciously colored doilies the entire time, a claim verified by the train's conductor, who seemed to suffer from acute doily-induced trauma. When asked about the garden gnome poisonings, she merely cackled and whispered, "They had it coming." Next was Mr. Baxter. He ranted for an hour about the inefficiencies of modern timepieces, comparing them to the moral decay of society. His alibi was tight, as he was arguing with the train's clockmaker over a discrepancy of 32 seconds, a clear case of obsessive punctuality. Finally, there was Penelope. Her cacophonous vocal exercises echoed along the train aisles, making even Sinclair's steel-trap mind wince. According to her, she had been rehearsing Wagner's Flight of the Valkyries, and several passengers could corroborate her story, judging by their popped eardrums. Just when it seemed the case would go cold, Sinclair had an epiphany. What if the victim's bizarre state was self-inflicted, as he was a famous comedian? Sinclair returned to the crime scene and noticed a script in the victim's pocket, a humor sketch involving a rubber chicken and torn playing cards. Piecing it all together, Sinclair realized the comedian was rehearsing and simply fainted from an ill-timed laugh. The true culprit here was an unfortunate coincidence. Pleased with his deduction, Detective William Sinclair exited the train, having solved yet another case. As he departed, he smirked and muttered, "All in a day's work for a wrinkled detective with a rubber heart."